So for today's lesson, we are going to be working on dividing whole numbers by multiples of 10. So we're going to use what we learned in our last lesson with partial quotients, and we're going to look at how we can start moving that partial quotient strategy closer to the standard algorithm, and we're going to do that by looking at your multiples of 10. So the first problem we're going to take a look at is on page 263, where it says Cameron has $168 to buy uniforms that cost $20 each. How many uniforms can his team buy? Will there be any money left over? So if I have $168 to spend and each uniform is going to cost me $20, I need to figure out how many uniforms I can solve for. So I'm solving for the number of uniforms that I can buy. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set this up in my box. So I'm going to do 168 inside the box because it's the dividend. The dividend always goes inside the box. The divisor is $20. The $20 is going to go outside of the box. Okay. And then I'm going to take what I know. So I'm going to use my estimation strategy. And I'm going to take 168. I'm going to leave 20 alone because it's already a multiple of 10. So I'm going to take 168 and I'm going to divide that by 20. And when I divide that by 20, I'm going to take 160. And when I divide that by 20, I get 8. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to put the 8 right here above this 8. And then I'm going to multiply. So 20 times 8 is going to be 160. I'm going to subtract, and then I have 8 left over. So for my solving, U equals 8 uniforms. So he can buy 8 uniforms. And after he buys 8 uniforms, he has $8 left over. Okay. All right. So how much more money? So I'm going to have to look back on the bottom of the page. It says how much more money is needed to buy additional uniforms. He would need an additional $12 to buy one more uniform. Alrighty, let's go ahead and take a look at your next problem. So the next problem that we have takes a look at school buses. So it says this year a group of 249 students is taking a field trip. One bus is needed for every 20 students. How many buses are needed? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create my division problem. So I have 249 students and going on a field trip, and each bus holds 20. So again, the 20 is my multiple of 10. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to create an estimate, and I'm going to use compatible numbers as my estimate. So I'm going to do not 250, but I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to round it down to 240. I could do 250 if I was comfortable knowing what half of 25 is. If I don't know what half of 25 is, then you're better off doing what's half of 20. So 240 divided by 20. So when I do that, I cross off my zeros. 24 divided by 2. So my answer is going to be somewhere around 12. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start. I'm going to put 249 inside the box. Almost put 12 outside the box. I'm going to do 20 outside the box. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at how many times 20 can go into 24. So when I look at this, 20 is able to go into 24 one time. So there's my 110. So I'm going to multiply 20 times 1. So it's a little bit different because last time I was doing 20 times 10. This time I'm just going to do 20 times 1. And when I do that, I get 20. Now I'm going to subtract 20 from 24, and I'm going to get 4. So my first partial quotient that I have is going to be this 1, which represents 110. The next partial quotient, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bring down this 9. So I'm going to bring this down, and then this is my next value that I'm looking for. So now I look at 20 is going to go into 49 twice. So I'm going to put the 2 above the 9. So 20 times 12 is going to get me really close to 249. So now I'm going to multiply 20 times 2 because I've already multiplied by this 1. So 20 times 2 is going to be 40. When I subtract, I have 9 left over. So my answer is going to be 12, and up here I'm going to write remainder 9. So this looks a little bit different than what we did with the partial quotients. What I had done if I were doing it with partial quotients, I would have done 10, and then I would have done 2 up above. And when I did 10 and 2 up above, I'd add them together and I would get 12. Here, it looks a little bit different because I did not separate out my partial quotients. I wrote them as one quotient, and that's how I ended up with 12 remainder 9, not 19. Okay, and so if I look at this, it says how many buses are needed. My answer is not going to be 12 buses because I have this remainder 9. My answer is going to be 13 buses because I have to have a bus for those other 9 students. Okay. All right. How we could check to see if this answer is correct is we could actually multiply and solve. So to multiply this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my quotient of 12 and I'm going to multiply that by 20. So I'm going to do 12 times 20 and I'm going to come back to the remainder. So I'm not done with the remainder, but I'm going to come back to it. So 0 times 2 is 0. 0 times 1 is 0. So I'm just going to put my placeholder here, and I'm going to multiply everything times 12. So 2 times 2 is going to be 4. 2 times 1 is going to be 2. So I have 240. But then what I need to do is I need to go back and I need to add in this remainder. So it's going to be plus 9. So 240 plus 9, I get 249. 249 was my original number, so my answer checks out. So to solve it, I'm going to use the opposite operation or the inverse operation, which is multiplication. Okay, go to your guided practice on the next page. So number 1 says, in the example at the top of page 264, if only 137 students were going on the trip, how many buses would be needed? So if I had 137 instead of my other value, and I have 20 students per bus, what I'm going to do, I'm going to take 137 and I'm going to do round that to 140. 140 divided by 20, I get 7. So I know my answer is going to be somewhere around 7. I then put 137 inside the box, and I'm going to divide by 20. Now, here I'm going to look. Can 20 go into 13? The answer is no. 20 is larger than 13, so it can't go into. So I need to look at how many times 20 can go into 137. 20 is going to go into 137. It's going to go in there, let's see, 6 times. Because when I do 2 times 6, I get 12. So I'm going to do 120. And I'm subtract, and I'm left with 17. I don't have anything else to bring down, so when I don't have anything else to bring down, it's going to be a remainder of 17. So I have 6 buses that are going to be completely full, and then I have one more bus that's going to be almost full with 17 students, so I need a total of 7 buses to be able to fit 137 students. So it says in the example at the top, page 264, why is 12 buses a reasonable estimate? Okay, so we came up with 240 divided by 20, and we had 12 as our reasonable estimate. We know that 12 is a reasonable estimate because 249 is close to 240. And so that's how I get that. Because it's 249 is close to 240, and that's what I rounded to, my answer is going to be a reasonable estimate. All right, so we're going to write in the missing numbers. We're going to divide using the standard algorithm. So I have 20, and I'm going to divide that into 280. So again, I'm going to do the first thing. And I'm going to look and I'm going to see if 20 can go into 28. 20 can go into 28 one time. So then I'm going to multiply 20 times 1, and I get 20. I'm going to subtract, and I have 8 as a remainder. My next step is going to be to bring down the 0. Then I'm going to multiply. So I have to look at how many times does 20 go into 80. 20 goes into 80 4 times. So now I'm going to multiply. 20 times 4 equals 80. So I'm going to write the 80 underneath the other 80 and subtract. And then I have 0 left over. So my answer, my quotient for 280 divided by 20 is going to be 14. Okay. I'm now going to do 766, and I'm going to divide that by 80. All right, so when I take a look at this problem, I look, 80 is not able to go into 76, so 80 needs to go into 766. So I'm going to use what I know about my math facts. So I'm going to take a look here at my 8, and I'm going to underline my 2 digits here. 8 is going to go into 76 about 9 times because, let me change my colors, 8 times 9 is going to be 72. So I'm going to see, so 80 times 9 would be 720. So I'm going to put the 9 above the 6. So 80 times 9 is going to be 720. I'm going to subtract, and I have 46 as my remainder. Okay. Go ahead and take a look at least one more. So the next one I'm going to take a look at is I'm going to take a look at number 6 on your independent practice on the bottom of page 265. And I have 60, and I'm going to divide that into 593. So I'm going to do a little bit different this time. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do an estimation just to get that practice in. 593 is going to be near 600. And so I'm going to do 600 divided by 60. So my answer should be somewhere around 10. Okay. So when I take a look at 60, 60 does not go into 500 or does not go into 59. So I have to look at how many times it's going to go into 593. Well, it's not going to go in there 10 times because that's too big. So I'm going to go backwards in math fact. So I'm going to do 60 times 9. And when I do 60 times 9, I get 540. So I'm going to put the 9 above the 3, and I'm going to multiply 60 times 9, and I get 540. When I subtract, 3 subtract 0 is 3, 9 subtract 4 is going to be 5. This answer works because 53 is less than 60, so my remainder is 9, remainder 53. So at this point in time, if you feel like you are comfortable with using the standard algorithm, I'm going to have you guys go ahead and start working on your independent practice. If you are not comfortable with that, I have another video that's going to go through and give you guys some more practice problems that you can find on your independent practice in page 265. Set these problems up and do them with me as I go step by step to help you work on understanding how the standard algorithm